Imagine you are a cowboy riding around the Midwest around turn-of-the-century United States with nothing but your gun and your personal goals to guide you through a lawless, cutthroat area of moral ambiguity. You have an infinite number of possibilities to explore, and all it takes is one misstep to completely change the outcome of a situation. If put in that particular position, how would you act knowing that you have the ability to change and impose your will on an area and the people around you? Say, for example, you see a rival group of agents robbing a store or holding up a bank. Would you interfere or try to make yourself scarce? Would you see their success as an opportunity to steal their loot? Would you be the bank robber? Would you help those being robbed and protect them against those who would steal their precious loot? These are the choices faced by every division agent every time they step into the Dark Zone, except the bank robbers are the rogue agents. I ask you, which would you rather be, the hunter or the hunted? The Division Dark Zone's imagery, ambiance, and wealth of player freedom make it one of the most unique and recognizable features of any modern video game, and there is some rich lore to explain how it got there in the first place. For the purposes of this video, this is not meant to be a comprehensive lore analysis, but merely an overview of the background story for the New York City Dark Zone. Originally, this quarantine zone in the middle of Manhattan was heavily patrolled by the Joint Task Force and was created under the government order to make sure those infected with the green poison virus could be contained. Within a few hours, the military had to pull out all troops of this contaminated zone and left their best equipment behind. They left behind not only the supplies, medicine, and weapons, but also thousands upon thousands of infected, dying, and already dead people. With the growing number of riots and supply shortages forcing the military and JTF to pull out, leaving behind much of their valuable gear and abandoning many of the division's first wave of agents to fend for themselves, this fact is particularly important for the lore of rogue agents and the main plot for the Aaron Keener story arc. This perceived betrayal by the JTF and the Division was what catalyzed Aaron Keener and other rogue agents to turn away from the SHD and become rogue. More on that in another video. The Dark Zone is now mostly empty, lawless, and basically an isolated zone, and outside communication is limited. Dangerous gangs roam the streets in brutal conflict, fighting over the remainders and the scraps. Many of New York City's iconic and famous landmarks are in the Dark Zone, including the Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center, Radio City Music Hall, Carnegie Hall, and the Plaza Hotel, among many others. Let's talk about some of the defining characteristics of the Division's Dark Zone that make it such an iconic area to the Division franchise. And in particular, let's talk about the rogue mechanics. The first of these mechanics would be the iconic rogue mechanics found within the Dark Zone. Keeping in spirit of the cowboy analogy from the beginning of the video, this would be the Division's version of being the criminal or the bank robber, running from the law. Breaking the law or going rogue has its consequences, but also has the potential to be absolutely and completely ludicrous in terms of rewards. See, the thing that makes the Division's Dark Zone so absolutely terrifying, but simultaneously kinda exhilarating to play, is the amount of risk assumed by every single player when they enter. The Dark Zone is marketed as the lawless area with the best loot, and it's really kinda true. For a rogue agent, every agent, regardless of status, is potentially carrying a useful item, perhaps an exotic, or maybe that last piece of classified gear that I just couldn't get out because someone conveniently gave you the extraction. Sorry about that, guys. Future Deltah here. Nice to meet you all. Present Deltah is still upset that he had to farm a bit more to get that one last piece of classified striker gear, so he's going to cool off for a bit. Shocking. But as Present Deltah was saying, yeah, rogue agents kill non-rogues and farmers steal their loot. It's a risky business. That's the Dark Zone. Hey, Future Deltah, thank you for stepping in there. I think I got it from here. Are you sure? Your face is still pretty red. Shut the Okay, looting mechanics. As previously mentioned, the best gear in the game was found in the Dark Zone. So naturally, people came to the Dark Zone to farm the landmarks for the chance of getting that god-rolled item. The Dark Zone was exactly what it needed to be and nothing more. It created the perfect amount of anxiety through the sound design, lack of visibility, level design, and in particular, the amount of body bags risk involved in every single operation. I still remember to this day exactly how it felt to get my first MP7 in patch 1.3 and the white knuckle grip on the controller when it was time to extract. And now this leads me to my next point regarding extractions. Believe it or not, extractions used to be more forgiving to the farmers than they are right now. Not only did you have to fight through the tough enemies at the Dark Zone landmarks, you had to transport the loot to one of a limited number of extraction points. Not to mention, every single time that you popped an extraction, anyone within a close vicinity or anyone even looking at the map in the Dark Zone could see that you were extracting at this very moment. But keeping with the virus theme, items from the Dark Zone had to be extracted via helicopter and decontaminated before you can access it in your inventory. Back in the early days of the Division 1, as soon as you put the loot bag on the rope, it was yours. The loot was secured. Massive, however, thought that that was a bit too easy, so they added a rope cutting feature to make it so you had to defend your extraction from NPCs and whoever else felt like challenging you at the moment. So from this supporting evidence, it becomes abundantly clear that the Division's Dark Zone had so much character and it had a clear vision of what it wanted to offer players. It offered an intense challenge, but not only through the PvP, but with PvE as well, in the form of landmarks and contamination events, which are environmental hazards of the virus. But if you could out-heal the effect of the virus on your health, you could take out the cleaner bosses that would show up to burn out the contamination and have a chance at some sweet, sweet loot. But why? So if you have never stepped foot in the Dark Zone, you may wonder, and reasonably so, why anyone would go through all the trouble and assume all of the risk of going into the Dark Zone to farm gear or do anything in there in the first place. And to this I say, because it's fun, bro. The Dark Zone offers the only truly and infinitely replayable experience in the game, whether it be helping other players get geared up, helping other players farm and then stabbing them in the back immediately after helping them, farming materials, fighting other players, or just plain old 1v1ing with a buddy to test out a new build. There's an infinite number of options that you can try out within the Dark Zone, and who's to say that you can't do any of it? That is the allure of the Dark Zone. You have the freedom to do whatever you please in the DZ. That is the entire appeal of the lawless area from the Division 1. And unfortunately, the disconnected Dark Zones in the Division 2 do not really capture the same magical feeling that the Division 1 did, but they all seem to have their own merits and are unique in their own way. The Dark Zones in the Division 2 all have their own character and flair, especially with the rotating occupied Dark Zone and Dark Zone specific loot, but the coherent, contiguous Dark Zone from the Division 1 outclasses the disconnected, decentralized Dark Zones from the Division 2. From fulfilling player power fantasy to providing real experiences and offering significant upgrades to your character via the loot, the Dark Zone perfected the Division. Well guys, I hope you guys enjoyed my recap of why the Dark Zone in the Division 1 was so special and so spectacular. There are so many things that the Dark Zone offered in the Division 1, from the special rogue mechanics to 1v20 server battles, which the Division 2 could really use larger Dark Zones. The Division 1 Dark Zone had it all. Also, let me know what you guys thought of present and future Deltah. You guys like me playing characters like that in my videos? I got the inspiration from another YouTuber I watch, and I wanted to see how it would work out in this kind of video. To be honest, I think it was pretty fun. I had fun making it, so yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Stream on Wednesday at 7-ish Eastern time, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Comment your thoughts down below, and Deltah out. Peace. Peace.